Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeff Baker. I'm Fenestration Canada's technical consultant. Our topic of our webinar today is the Ontario Green Energy Act and how it's changed to include windows just recently. This will be a short presentation of about 10 minutes, and I encourage anyone with questions to please send those in to us. So let's get started. So the Green Energy Act, the Ontario Green Energy Act, what I'm going to do is do a comparison of the Ontario Energy Code and the Energy Act and explain the differences and the purposes of the two different legal documents in the province of Ontario. Then we'll go into the Ontario Green Energy Act, what's changed, how residential windows have been included, what the performance requirements are, the certification and labeling requirements, and then I'll draw a few conclusions toward the end. So, the Ontario Energy Code for residential buildings, what's known as SB 12, is out there. Been out there now since the beginning of 2012. Actually, it's been out there quite a bit longer than that, but it was just modified in 2012. And it covers any window being installed where a building permit is required. So whether that is new construction, large renovations where a building permit's required, that's what the Energy Code covers. What's missing from that is any windows that are sold into replacement and other applications that do not require a building permit. That is where the Energy Code comes in, or sorry, the Energy Act comes into place. The Ontario Green Energy Act, like any energy act across the country, BC was the first province to enact legislation for fenestration under their Energy Act. Ontario is now the second province to do so. The difference here is all products covered in the Energy Act sold in a province are required to meet the requirements of that Energy Act. So the Ontario Green Energy Act has recently included windows. And to be clear, it's windows, no doors, no side lights for doors, no skylights, just residential windows at this point in time. So we'll take a look at what these changes are in the Energy Act and how they will impact window manufacturers. So the Act was amended to include windows. This change took effect on January 1 of this year, but windows are specifically written into not require compliance until January 1 of 2014. So you've got until January 1, 2014 to comply with this Energy Act. It's windows being sold for use in Part 9 buildings where the building is being used for partial or entire residential occupancy. So we're looking at residential houses, small row houses. If you've got even small doctor's offices with a residential unit above, for example, that's all covered. If it were a building built under the Part 9 of the building code for small buildings that are non-residential occupancy, so again, let's say it's a small doctor's office that's been built, looks like a house, but it's being used commercially. Technically, the products going into that building would not be required to comply, but as a window manufacturer, it's going to be a little difficult to tell the difference of where your products may be going. So effectively, we're talking any window being built for Part 9, you're going to have to look into this requirement. Part 9 makes it clear it's less than 6,000 square meters of area and less than 3 stories. That's the type of buildings we're looking at. The Energy Act did write in a number of exemptions. Decorative windows with stained glass, wrought iron inserts, or blind inserts inside the IG unit do not have to comply. Heritage replacement windows do not have to comply. There's an 11-point list of what defines the heritage building and the types of windows written right into the Energy Act in more detail. If you're working in the heritage replacement window area, you would need to look into that and what those details are. Glazing replacement. If the glass is just being replaced in the window, it is not required to meet this requirement. Door side lights are specifically written out, and windows designed for specific buildings. These are custom one-off windows for specific buildings have been written in the Energy Code and exempted from this. That will probably require some interpretation along the way as to what they actually mean by that. My current view on this is that it is a custom one-off windows for one individual building. They've been excluded. So those are the exemptions that are written in at this time. We look at the performance requirements now.
There's a question for you, Jeff.
Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, it's a good one to talk about now. Does Windows designed for a specific building mean any custom design windows are exempt?
that is just the exact kind of interpretation we're going to need to get. So yeah, if this is a custom designed decorative, well, if it were decorative with stained glass wrought iron, it would be exempt. But if it is a custom designed one-off window for one building, what they mean by windows designed for a specific building, uh, that's going to need a lot of interpretation. We're going to need to go to the province and get them to provide some additional clarity on that. I don't have good answers at this point in time, but I do expect to be working with the Ministry of Energy on this to talk to them to get some clarification. But that's an excellent question because, uh, as I say, I don't know. But if it's a specific one, one very specific window for an individual building, I think that's what it's intended. But we're going to need to get some more interpretation of that for sure. Thank you for that question. That was a good one. Okay. So the performance requirements now. The U factor requirement of 2.0 in metric units or lower, or an energy rating of 17 or higher. This is the minimum requirement in the SB12 Energy Code document. And the SB12, we've been through that in a previous webinar. It's quite complicated. You could be required to use anything from a 2.0, 1.8, 1.6, or 1.4 U factor window, or the matching ER that goes with those U factors in the building code, depending on all the other components going into the building envelope. So the very minimum requirement in the building code is the 2.0 or energy rating of 17. So it's in line with the building code as the minimum requirement. There is a clause in there for basement windows incorporating a load-bearing structural frame must be double glazed with low E. This exact same language is in the SB12 Energy Code document for these load-bearing windows, basement windows. So those are the performance requirements. You'll notice they're meet the minimum requirement for the building code at the very least, and they are actually well below Energy Star requirements for Ontario at this time. So, in the sense, the Energy Act requirements for U factor are not stringent, not a large concern at this point in time. This is a very large concern. The certification requirements that have been included in the Act. All products covered under the Green Energy Act in Ontario, whether that be light bulbs, refrigerators, any product sold in the province, has to be independently verified by a third-party certification program. So the products covered in this Energy Act, any product that's already been there, has to have this certification requirement met. So the Act requires that all windows sold in Ontario after January 1, 2014 will have to have an energy performance certification, certified under an independent third-party certification program. They specifically spell out two different ways to do this. If you're going to comply with the CSA A440.2 energy performance standard for windows, then it has to be done by a Standards Council of Canada approved organization to certify to that standard. Currently, there are 3 programs out there: CSA certification, Intertek Testing Services, and Quality Auditing Institute. Those are the 3 Canadian bodies doing certification to the CSA A440.2. Alternatively, you can use the NFRC program and get certified to NFRC 100 and 200 to meet the U factor requirements. That needs to be done by an independent inspection agent approved by NFRC. Currently, you can see that list of the 4 that are out there. The American Architectural Manufacturers Association, AMA, Keystone Certification, National Accreditation Management Institute, which is NAMI, or the Window and Door Manufacturers Association, WDMA. Any of those 4 are currently running NFRC certification programs. If you're in that program, that certification will be valid. The other thing that is spelled out in the Energy Act then is labeling requirements. In order to prove compliance and that you are certified, you will have to put a temporary label on the product, as well as some permanent markings that match. If you are in the NFRC program, for example, the permanent label by NFRC more than meets the requirements of the energy legislation for permanent markings, but the temporary label has to be applied, showing the certification mark in this case of NFRC, or if it's the CSA, it would show the certification mark of one of the 3 organizations. My apologies to CSA and Intertek. I just happened to have the QAI label handy. So then you would need the certification label on the product to prove compliance. So a couple of manufacturers, when this announcement went out in late December that this is happening, have contacted me and said, who's going to be looking for this? How will it be enforced? And I've just spoken quite a bit with the folks in British Columbia. British Columbia has gone the other way. They had the Energy Efficiency Act and are now bringing in an energy code. What they're seeing is building officials will now be trained to understand that in order for a window to be sold in the province, it must have this certification label on it. While it's not required to meet the building code, it is going to be required now to meet the Energy Act. So one level of enforcement is no certification label on new construction or any project where there's a building permit required. The building official can pull the product without that certification label on the product now. So de facto, because the Energy Act requires certification, all windows require certification. So one level of enforcement will be through the building officials. The other would be self-regulation. If you as a manufacturer see competitors' products out in the marketplace without these labels, without showing the certification, you can contact the Ontario Minister of Energy and inform them. They have then a mechanism of going out to enforce these rules. There are some pretty strong penalties for not complying with this law. It's in fact much tougher and much more onerous than the building code at this time. Negotiating with a building official, not an option. If you're not in compliance, you've got to deal with the province directly. So this is the guts of what's been added to the energy, the Green Energy Act. Doors, side lights, skylights, and that's all doors. Sliding glass doors, swinging doors, all of those have not been covered at this time. It is only windows. My view on this down the road, that Energy Act can be updated anytime the Ministry of Energy in Ontario feels they would like to update it. They can do that with sufficient notice. I would anticipate that somewhere down the road, doors, skylights, and other fenestration components would be covered under this in the future. So some concluding thoughts here. The performance requirements are not going to be a problem. Most manufacturers selling into new construction or replacement windows are already offering products that meet these requirements. The certification will not be a problem for manufacturers that are already in the Energy Star program, as their products have already been certified by either NFRC or one of the 3 certification programs in Canada. So in order to be part of NFRC, you already had to have thermal certification. So if you're in Energy Star, this is nothing new, won't be a problem. Certification requirements will be a very big deal for manufacturers that do not have certification yet on any of their products, or if they don't have them on all of their products. If you've only, let's say you've only submitted some of your products to Energy Star and not all of them, you will now have to get certification on all of your products. Finally, I'm trying to explain to manufacturers, do not delay getting this certification work done. The earlier you get this done, the better off you're going to be. If you're pushing and you miss the January 1st deadline, this will prevent you from selling your products in the province of Ontario. After January 1, any product being sold in the province must have that certification label on the product. So again, I can't stress enough, working with the simulation labs and the certification bodies, I expect in Ontario they're going to be fairly busy trying to keep up with the workload to get the products that have not been certified to date into the system somewhere, whether that's NFRC or one of the 3 programs certifying to CSA. So again, do not delay. It could cause you incredible grief come January 1 of next year. So on that, I'll open it up to any questions. So JF, if you would just take a look at the questions for me. Oh, JF, are you there? Okay, I'll do the best I can to get into the questions here. Does the window design for a specific building...
Do you hear me, Jeff?
Now I do, JF. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know what happened. One of the question is, if using the ER PAT, is there a minimum U value required?
No, not at all.
It's one or the other, right?
It's one or the other. That's correct.
Okay. Is a bilingual label required?
Do you know what? I'm not certain of that one.
Because I know for Energy Star, we for an FRC, we can use English only, French only, or both. But I don't know about the Ontario Act.
Do you know what? I will take that on and try and follow up. And my intention is also to produce a bulletin on this that will be distributed by Fenestration Canada. So I'll add that and see what I can find out about that.
Okay. Uh, why have they left skylights and doors out? Do you know?
I don't really know at this point. I suspect that it was just easier to tackle windows first and look at skylights and doors at a later date. I don't believe in any way they've been neglected full time. They've just been neglected in this round.
Okay. Another question, good one. Building officials don't have authority under the Green Energy Act. How do we refuse a product not regulated under the building code?
Um, because what it will come down to, and I've had this discussion in British Columbia and already in Ontario, that if the product does not meet the Green Energy Act after the first of the year next year, then it is not legally allowed to be sold in Canada. Therefore, it cannot go into a building to begin with. And that's while the building officials do not necessarily have the authority to enforce the Green Energy Act, they also do have the authority to restrict a product that is not legally allowed to be used in construction. And after January 1, products that are not certified will not be legally allowed to be used in new construction.
Okay. Just to confirm, do the energy simulation needs to be certified? Can the manufacturer just do the simulations and present the reports when required?
No, the products, the simulations have to be done, submitted to a certification body, and labeled. That's all part of the Energy Efficiency Act.
For our renovation jobs where no permits are required, does this apply?
Absolutely. In fact, this is the segment of our industry that this legislation is absolutely aimed at, because products for new construction or any construction job had to meet the building code. Any product in replacement had no real energy requirements at all. This is exactly what they're aiming the Energy Efficiency Act at.
What about the windows that are used as door, transom, or side lights?
That's a very gray area. It'll be difficult. Right now, they wrote out door side lights. So if it's a window being used as a door side light, it is probably exempt. But if that same window is used anywhere else in the building, it would be required.
I got a question here. Where will spandrel glass fall in modern home designs? Window companies do not label.
That's a very difficult question. Um, I'm not sure how. I'm not even sure how that would fall under the building code right now.
You gonna check that?
I'll add that to my list of things to investigate.
Okay, thank you. Where can I find the heritage exception criterias?
The Green Energy Act is available online. What I think we'll do is when we post this webinar, we'll post a copy of the act with it. I've got I think I've got the Word version of it downloaded already on my computer. If you really need to see it faster than a week or so, let me know and I can get it to you. But what we'll do is we'll post this with the presentation.
How is this act different from section 9.36 of the NBC? NBC 936 added energy efficiency requirements as well.
Okay, and that's an important distinction to understand that that is anything covered under the building code and what is been added into the Ontario Building Code, which is part 12 of the Ontario Building Code. It's been there since 2006. The energy component, anyway, and drawing a blank for some reason, the equivalent of 9.36 in the Ontario Code only covers or only covers construction where a building permit is required. This document goes beyond the building code and says covers any product being sold in the province. So it covers new construction, replacement windows, both. And that's the big and significant difference. And then goes that one step further that the building code doesn't and requires that the products be certified.
Okay. I got a comment here from Morgan saying, but I'm not sure it's good. That's why I named Morgan. A spandrel is wall. Does that?
Yes, and I think Morgan, you're exactly right. In the construction sense, under the building code, spandrel would be treated as wall and not transparent components of the building. So I think in that case, the question about spandrel, this would not apply to spandrel because it is considered wall. And I think I'd agree with you on that one, Morgan. Thank you.
Another question, what types of timeline requirements for the building inspector to complete their acceptance of product is defined? This can have major implications for receipt of payment.
Yeah, the timelines on new construction, it gets really tricky because when changes were made in the building code, um, what it would normally come down to on new construction, just following what the building code does in new construction when they make a change. If you pull the building permit after January 1, 2014, they'll be looking for product that meets this. Building permit pulled before January 1, 2014, I believe they will allow product in there that does not comply. There will be a transition period, so the timelines on all of this, always the building officials always tie it to the time when the building permit was pulled and taken out.
That's it. No more question.
Well, I want to thank everyone. As I said, this was going to be a short presentation, but I think it's a very important topic. The recording of the presentation will get posted, and I'll include the act as well. And I want to thank everybody for your participation today.